Welcome to Berkeley. We are really, really excited to see you all here. And you're at the beginning of an exciting, challenging, eye-opening, and all sorts of other things 4 years. I assume you're here because you're interested in biology, and at some level, either really know you're desperately got to do this, this is what I'm going to do at Berkeley, or maybe I'm interested in biology. And either way, we really like seeing you here, and you have lots more introductions later in the day and all week. So I'm going to do 2 things today. I'm going to give you a short lecture that may or may not be what you were already prepared for. It's only August 16th, and you're already in for a first lecture. But basically, I study plants, and I'm going to tell you why I love studying plants and what I think is really cool about them. I bet you definitely were not prepared that you were going to come in and get a lecture on plants. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit about biology and a little bit of advice, if I may say that. But just some tips, things we've learned over the years, and not nuts and bolts. There's plenty of people who will give you the nuts and bolts here, but a little bit more maybe to get a little perspective. This is why I'm a biologist. So I was really fortunate growing up to spend time outdoors. And that, for me, is the root of all of it. I love nature. I love natural history. I love these organisms, and I came to love trees. And that's in the Northeast. And when I came to California, I transplanted that to our local oaks and all the spectacular native plants we have in California. And each of you will have your own story. And we all have our own story of why we come to our interests in school and in research, and all of the faculty that you'll meet will have their own story of how they come to it. That's mine in a nutshell. There's a few things that went on along the way, like going to graduate school and becoming a professor and getting into this business for a living. Trees are really important organisms. They cover large portions of the globe, and they contain almost all the carbon that's on the land source. And carbon, as you may know, is a really important compound for lots of reasons. Among them, its role in global climate change and its role in keeping all of us alive, since we're mostly made out of carbon. Carbon is the backbone of all life. Most of the carbon on the land surface is contained in trees because they're really big organisms and they have a lot of wood, and all that wood is mostly composed of carbon. And we now have amazing tools like this, like actually sending up satellites around the world and being able to say, how tall are all those trees? And having global data sets from space of basic questions like this about biology. Trees are also solar panels. Leaves are solar panels. Leaves are nature's solar panels. I said that once. There's no metaphor for solar panels. They're really great, efficient organisms. They're really efficient at capturing light, capturing that energy, turning it into biological compounds that all of the rest of life works on. And you've all seen these things. Photosynthesis is a simple problem. Plants capture carbon and they lose light. But the reason I want to talk about this, not to already take you back into your intro bio, but photosynthesis is a great example of something that captures the essence of biology, what I find so exciting about biology. And that is the range of scales that we span in biology. Because this starts at a biochemical level. So everything you may learn about chemistry and biochemistry, you can bring to bear about studying photosynthesis, like all other cellular interactions, enzymes, proteins, working together, interacting with inorganic molecules to capture energy and drive living organisms. That scales up to the organelles within cells where all this is happening. These are embedded in the tissues of a leaf, and now we have to start understanding where the nitrogen's coming from and the nutrients and the water, which are embedded in these wonderful organs, plant organs, these wonderful flat, unusual, it's a very unusual organ when we think about the way we're built, a leaf, which are then attached to an entire plant, which are arranged in and assembled into ecosystems all the way up to the globe. And of all the biological processes, the one that perhaps has most lent itself to understanding scaling across these multiple scales of organization is the study of photosynthesis, because we can take these same processes and understand them all the way from the biochemical processes within a single cell up to how that affects the entire globe. What's really cool about carbon, though, or what's really interesting about carbon, is it's not only gained by organisms, it's lost by organisms. So we all respire, you're all burning off carbon as you burn off the carbohydrates you ate for breakfast, and that keeps our brain going, our muscles, plants are doing the same things. They're losing carbon back to the atmosphere. They also lose it when leaves fall off and decompose, and microbes grind them up and it turns into soil, and carbon is released to the atmosphere. And plants lose carbon when animals eat them. And that all eventually passes through respiration or decomposition back to the atmosphere. And then, in something that seems like quite a different kind of process, plants lose carbon when they burn up. And again, we're able to capture, we can think about this one question: how does carbon get into the ecosystem? How does it get out of the ecosystem? And we have these processes operating across multiple scales. And this really captures what you can study across the entire range of biology. So then we can ask these really simple questions. Why is the world green? Now, some of you may know the name Richard Feynman, a very famous physicist who was at Caltech. And he wrote once about how when he was young, he went and studied some biology. And he realized that almost anyone could ask a question in biology that no one knew the answer to. And for him, that's why he studied physics. He's like, I want to ask questions that only a few people even know how to ask. But this is the amazing thing about biology. If you have a younger sibling, if you remember yourself as a child, why are the trees green? Why is the sky blue? I mean, these simple questions that actually turn out to be quite profound questions. Why is the world green? Well, many of you may know an answer to this, which is that the key molecule of photosynthesis is chlorophyll, and it absorbs in the blue, it absorbs in the red, and it reflects in the, oh, so now we know that's why the world is green. Well, that's an answer. But another key to what's so fascinating about biology is that we can answer these questions at different levels. So that's a biochemical answer. But that doesn't answer a different question. Why aren't these places green? That's not because of the biochemistry of chlorophyll. Now we have to step up and look at the question at a different level. Some places aren't green because there's no nutrients, there's no water, it's too dry, it's too cold. If any of you have ever been to the White Mountains in Eastern California, one of our spectacular natural landscapes, these are just these incredibly dry and cold ecosystems at high elevations. Well, they're not going to be green. There is no chlorophyll. That's a different answer. Why isn't that system on the left green and the one on the right is? Well, that's a kelp forest off the California coast. And when urchins come in, if there's too many urchins, they can eat down the kelp, and now that system is no longer green. So it's because of animal activity. And this then scales up in really interesting ways that if there's sea otters around, they eat the urchins, and then the kelp recovers. But if there's orcas, they eat the sea otters, and then the urchins take off, and then the kelp is decimated again. So now we have this really bizarre system where you have this flipping between odd-numbered and even-numbered systems when you have animals involved. And if you remember everything I just said, that's one question in Bio 1b you're going to get right. And then we have fire, another phenomenon that, again, is a completely different category of explanation. Like, why do some places in the world burn? That has to do with where it rains and where it gets hot in summer. So unlike California, rains in winter, hot in summer, we're one of those places in the world that is very subject to wildfire. And this is a subject of research in biology. One of the things I work on is understanding the patterns and the risks of wildfire and the underlying biological processes. So it's all, again, to emphasize the importance of scale and thinking about problems across many different scales. There's no one right scale. That was a little bit, picture of California we can pass over. There's no one right scale in the study of biology. There's no one magical scale where the answer emerges. Biology is just layers on layers stacked on top of each other. And every layer of explanation looks to a layer below possibly to understand the mechanisms, looks above to put it in the context, an ecological context or an evolutionary context. And then we have this grand synthesis that emerges when you put it all together. Now, the second little mini topic that I really enjoy and that my lab works on here is that water side. Well, if you have to have water to get carbon, how do these trees get that water? A sequoia can move 2 tons of water in a day to stay alive. And this is, in fact, one of our other faculty here at Berkeley, Todd Dawson in IB, at work in his lab, which is to say, climbing up to the top of a sequoia to actually study what goes on in the canopy of those trees. Well, how plants move water has been one of the most debated and intensely studied subjects in plant physiology. It's actually a subject which is at the cutting edge of our understanding right now, really understanding these mechanisms. And now you apply some physics. There is a reason we ask you to learn physics. This is all about water moving down potential gradients. It's an energy potential gradient. But the water is going up, so it's obviously going against gravity. So how do they do that? Do plants push water? Do they pull water? It actually turns out they pull water. Some of you may remember this still. When the water evaporates out of leaves, it basically dehydrates the leaf and creates a suction force. So water is being pulled up 100 meters. That's more than you can pull it with a pump. The physics of what's going on inside those vessels is actually a really remarkable it's nature's application of the principles of physics at a molecular level to hold that column of water together. And it's under so much tension, not the kind you're going to feel at midterms, but it's under so much tension, which is to say negative pressure, because the water is being pulled, that that column of water can break. This is how we measure it. These instruments in the lab, you can put a plant into a chamber, crank up the pressure, and you get a compensating pressure that tells you what was going on inside the plant as the water is being pulled up through the vessels. And inside, we've found out that there's that negative pressure the water's under, it's being pulled up through the plant, can actually pull an air bubble in from outside. And if an air bubble gets pulled through little pores in the vessels inside a plant stem, that plant actually experiences an embolism. The plant has a stroke. And water can no longer move through a vessel that's had an embolism. And once the water moves through, once that embolism occurs and the plant can't move water, then what do we see? We see the impacts of the drought. So if you've been around California in the last 5 years, seen the pine trees in the Sierra, seen oak trees, what we're seeing, a lot of what we're seeing is the impacts of what happens at that molecular level when air bubbles get pulled into the vessels embolize and water can no longer move up to the leaves and support growth. The latest technology we use to capture the dynamics of what's going on in a leaf actually turns out to be, you can put a leaf on a scanner. You can literally put a leaf on the kind of a high-quality image scanner that you might use for documents, put it in the dark, and you can actually see vessels turn color when these air bubbles enter, and then do a little manipulation of the images and capture the different tensions, the stress levels at which different vessels are embolizing in the leaf and understand how species differ. And then here we are this March down at one of our research sites in San Luis Obispo, where even with the record rains that we experienced, some of these trees were so hammered in the drought that they're not recovering. And the mortality in the Sierra has gotten the most attention, but the oak trees on the coast have also suffered quite a bit. So what happens when those trees die? Their carbon eventually goes back to the atmosphere. They're going to fall over, they're going to burn, they're to decompose. And now this becomes a further factor contributing to global climate change. And the carbon in trees have the potential to capture carbon and offset some of the negative impacts that we're having on, well, say the impacts on carbon in the atmosphere we're having. If you look at what we project this will do on human society, we would call them negative impacts. The impacts of climate change and rising CO2, and ecosystems play a key role, and drought and fire raise additional concerns because that carbon gets lost to the atmosphere and contributes to carbon, the rise of carbon in the atmosphere. And this has been, this may be a curve you've seen before, the data we have from Hawaii going back to 1950s and 60s of carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. But you see the little zigzag in that line? That zigzag is the global signature of plants photosynthesizing in summer and then releasing carbon in the winter. So every little zigzag is the CO2 level in the atmosphere goes down as all the trees and the algae photosynthesize, and it goes back up as carbon is released during the winter as they're respiring. It goes back down the next summer. So we're seeing the entire planet breathing on that annual time scale, and against that, carbon in the atmosphere going up, and a lot of that due to fossil fuels. And understanding climate change is another key area of my research interest. We're interested in what will happen over 20 and 30 and 50 years. Well, these are difficult problems because there's a climate modeler who has a wonderful TED talk, totally deadpan. He says, what we really need at this moment is data from the future. And unfortunately, these data are not available at the present time. So the study of climate change it really presents a lot of challenges. As we try to look ahead, we combine a lot of different methods. We can simulate the conditions of climate change in a greenhouse, whether it's nutrient deposition, CO2 rise, temperature, change in rainfall, and look at changes all the way from the microbial communities to biochemical reactions of the plants and these little mini ecosystems. We can get out of the field and see how things have already changed in California over the last 80 years. The density of really big trees has gone down by about 50% actually since the 20s and 30s. And some of this appears to be cumulative effects of rising temperatures. And then lots of small trees have come in because of fire suppression. They're all burning up. This is the story of California's ecosystems that we're very engaged in fire ecology, forest ecology. And then we do a lot of computer modeling. So a lot of biology is done at the keyboard. Coding is incredibly important. Taking big data sets and climate data sets, projecting forward under different assumptions what might happen. And I imagine many of you will be interested in data science training. This is something that's really being transformed at Berkeley. Lots of opportunities to get trained in data science, coding, statistics, and data management. And this is a big part of your work in any scientific endeavor. And then I like to think about these things at a geographic scale. And then you can also learn some good skills in data visualization and thinking about transforming these big data sets and really being able to provide lessons that we can communicate to broader audiences who are not engaged in the nitty-gritty of all of our science. And we make all those projections, and then we take them to the field. And this is my lab's field site up in Sonoma County, where we have lots of trees. We're following them from the long haul. We look at patterns on the landscape. And we have opportunities for undergraduate research, as so many labs do, especially if you like, in our case, hanging out with poison oak. A constant accompaniment in California's landscapes. Okay, that's the end of asking you to actually listen to a science lecture. But partly it's literally, why I'm sharing it with you is because one of the first and most important lessons you can learn are things about being at Berkeley, about being in college, about being in a research university, is the faculty who teach your classes are the faculty who are engaged in discovery, engaged in research. And sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, well, if you go to a research university, yeah, they're great researchers, but you don't have good professors, because that's not what they're there for. And all I'll say, I will not promise you that every professor you have at Berkeley will just light up your day. I would probably regret that promise. One thing I will promise you is that every professor you have in Berkeley is one of the people engaged in the research in what they're teaching you about. They are at the cutting edge of their work. And that is one of the unique things that you get at a research university. And we'll talk more about what that can mean for you. And really approaching it in that way, I think, is a really important part of thinking about why are you here and what is unique to your experience here. So let me talk a little bit about biology. This is a building you'll all come to know and love, or know, if you pursue a biology degree. My office is on the 4th floor, right on the side that's pictured there. Up on the floors where some of the research labs are. 2nd and 3rd floors are some of the lecture halls and teaching labs at Valley Life Sciences. I look down out of my window and see how many of you have been on a tour, and stood with the concrete there and talked, and it mirrors back at you. So I've been here 12 years. I haven't done it yet. But I look out at the tour groups who are doing that all the time. All right, so this is where a lot of our teaching and research, teaching labs, and then some of the research labs. And a lot of the research labs are scattered all over campus. We'll start with just a good place to start. A good guess, if you're not sure where to get information at Berkeley, you can always just try the domain. Try how about biology.berkeley.edu? Oh, I scored, awesome. It was right there, the information I need. And we'll lead you on. Same with the departments, same with a lot of other information. So it's a good starting place. Now, biology is a lot of things. Biology has permeated almost all aspects of the sciences in the last 50 years, into physics, into chemistry, obviously into public health, into medicine. And the result of that is that you have a lot of choices. You have a lot of choices about where to go to pursue an interest in biology. Now, you're all here. Well, this is an LNS orientation. Some of you may not be from LNS, and that's fine, because that's what I'm focusing on here. So within LNS, we have our 2 core biology departments, molecular and cellular biology, which has several different tracks and majors within it, and integrative biology, which has a couple of tracks. But then you have all these other choices. And whether or not you pursue those majors and look into them, that also means that you need to be looking broadly for where you may find courses, because biology is just so embedded in so many parts of the natural sciences. Within LNS, we have these 2 core majors, and this is not an official list of topics. This is just giving you a flavor of the things that are covered. It's in the old days, if you go back deep into the 20th century, in American universities, most universities had a botany department and a zoology department, and eventually maybe a microbial department. And over time, most of those have gone away. Berkeley had that until some time ago, and really reflect this view of trying to capture biology at levels of organization. And MCB captures the cell biology, biochemistry, biophysics, genetics, genomics, up to the sort of organ cell and organ level aspects of physiology and development. And IB picks up right there rather seamlessly to again, some of the physiology anatomy, and then ecology, evolution, behavior, biomechanics, putting organisms both in a context of their evolutionary diversity, as well as sort of thinking about the organism as an integrated unit. So the two are really, in many ways, seamlessly connected and really layered on, sort of sitting there layered on top of each other. It doesn't mean you can study all of that, but it does mean that all of these different flavors are available, and somewhere in there you may find your personal interests. Just briefly, if you do pursue one of the majors, MCB or IB, as I said, almost all paths, or many of the other majors there, almost all paths to biology majors will lead you through Bio 1A and 1B. Now to get there, you'll be led through chemistry and physics and some other things along the way. So we probably won't see many of you, maybe until next year in these classes, just because there's a number of things to tackle. But everyone's got their own path here, right? It depends on what you've taken in high school, whether you came in with AP, whether you're starting for sciences with a new interest. There's just so many different paths, and that there's a lot of room for, and that we really embrace. But these really span those levels of organization that I just described. Now the key, Bio 1A and 1B, it's a big class. You may find, for some of you, you'll find like, oh, I remember this from high school. Some of it I remember pretty well. Some of it I don't remember pretty well. For others of you, it may be newer material, and you may find you're working hard to digest a lot of material. And as you do that, of course, part of the key is to say, what's sparking my interest? Like, where do I want to go with this? Because it's a real span. It covers a lot of material. And then, I'm going to come back to that in a second. And then leads you on to the upper division classes. And there's a couple things to say about this. Obviously, the upper division classes are where you get much deeper into the material and where you can customize your course of study, customize your major, pursue particular interests. So in those early courses, thinking about what's really getting you excited, that's your opportunity to think about, where do I want to go? What other courses do I want to take? And this is just a small sampling. I just grabbed this off the course list because these go on. These goes on and on. In some ways, it may be a little overwhelming. When you go into one of these classes, again, first remember what I said. This is where you have this opportunity to be taking classes with researchers who are actively engaged in the cutting edge of these different disciplines, and getting leading you up to that moment, leading you up to that point of discovery is one of the real excitements. Another thing to do is go in and say, oh boy, I'm not sure I'm really excited about this class, but then ask yourself a question. Why did this professor decide to spend their career studying this? What is it about this subject that is so compelling? And if you can find an answer to that question of why that professor spent their career studying it, you may find it sparks unexpectedly your own interest in the topic, even if it's something that you hadn't thought about or didn't know might interest you as you entered into it. A quick note, one of those classes says field trips. Again, I'm an ecologist, so I really do, that's my passion, as I've shown you. And there's one particular opportunity I'll just call out. It may only be for a small number of you, but even in Bio 1B, there's an option to take a special section in lab with an additional unit, extra work attached, and get engaged in opportunities to work in the field and pursue ecological research, if that's your interest. Okay, I'm just going to try to capture a few thoughts here. Things that I hope at least a couple of them might stick with you and be useful to you. We know you're getting slammed with a ton of information this week, so this will be, hopefully keep it at a pretty high level. And if you came here looking for any specific details, then you'll be disappointed because I'm not here to share the details with you because they're all on the web, right? I mean, this is the whole point. All that information is out there. We're here to help you just think about how do you want to approach your studies? How do you want to approach Berkeley? Okay, number one, ask a lot of questions. And what I mean by that, it's not just about asking questions in class. It's about asking students who are in classes ahead of you, advisors, peers. There's people out there who know a lot about this place, right? You are not expected to know the answers. You will learn them. You'll become that upperclassman who has advice for entering students. And don't just ask one person one question and think you got the answer. Because sometimes, first of all, occasionally we get it wrong. We don't all get the answer right the first time, so ask the question multiple times. But some of this is not about policies. It's not about a rule. It's the advice, like how do I navigate this place? And once you've asked several people and you're getting the same answer, that's something to pay attention to, because there's people who've been here a long time and have learned a lot about the paths to success. So you will get to know this place very well if you're a major in LNS in biology, 3060 VLSB in the building I just showed you, and this is where the undergraduate advisors and the staff who support the major have their offices. A second one, be flexible here. Don't assume that everything that worked for you is going to work here. And that could take any number of flavors, right? I mean, the most common thing I think that we see as a concern might be that maybe cramming worked for you in high school. And maybe you will learn, hopefully not the hard way, that maybe cramming's not going to work quite as well at Berkeley, because you're going to have a lot of classes. And maybe that means, you know what, I got to find different ways to study. So just be open, be flexible. Don't assume you know everything about yourself, about what you're going to enjoy, how you're going to enjoy it, how you're going to do best, how you can engage with your peers. Again, asking for questions, remembering that you are not alone. We all hear the stories. This is a big school. Many of you, there's probably more people in this room than some of you may have had in your graduating class in high school, right? Not all of you, but so this is a change. And it may be, and a lot of you were at the top of your class. I don't mean number one, but just that's why you're here, and we love having you here. But then you look around and you go, oh my gosh, all these other people are also at the top of their class. Well, that's what's so cool about the place, right? So just enjoy all these amazing people around you. But, and again, and don't feel like you got to tough it out alone. You have friends, you have peers, you have support. And just ask these questions, reach out for support. Don't wait until it's too late is the main thing. If there's anything we can say. And as faculty, certainly, the 12th week of class, if that's the first time someone comes in and says, oh my gosh, I'm struggling with the class. It's like, oh, really? I'm just meeting you now? Like, don't wait till then. So take charge of your education and engage with it. Go to office hours. That's a real picture. No one came. It only happened once, though. Like 20 people showed up the next day. But really, that's for Bio 1B, right? That's as big as this room. But the upper division classes, 30, 40, 50 people in the class, I have office hours and no one comes, not infrequently. And we're available, faculty are there. And it's the best time, and we've said we're available, right? You can email, you can make appointments, but everyone's busy. But this is an incredible resource. Okay, a few tips. First, I am imploring all of you to go to office hours at least once in every class you ever take here. What's the worst thing that could happen? I mean, it's a half an hour of your day. Just go and introduce yourself. Okay, but you're afraid that you won't know what to talk about. Oh my gosh, it's a professor. It's a Berkeley professor. I don't know what to say. Well, you know what? We're not quite sure what to say to you either, so just come in and have a question, right? So have one question. Just have one question. And then you've started the conversation. In a big class, if there's 15 people in office hours, just go sit in the back and just say, I'm just here to listen. Because you know what? You think you understand everything until you listen to hear your peers asking questions. You go, oh, I didn't know the answer to that question. So just go and listen. But having said that, have a question ready. But don't have it be a question that was actually in the textbook. And give me direct evidence that you haven't done the reading, right? That's a great start to an office hour. So do the reading, review your notes. But again, come in. It can be a question. You can say, you know what? I loved your lecture. I think I understood it all. And I want to know more. I'd love to, if there's time available, I want to talk more about the latest research. Just open up anything. And really getting to know faculty. There's been some actually studies done about how did people get the most out of college? What was reported? What are the common themes reported by students who said they really enjoyed college? And one of them was students who said they really made a connection with at least one faculty member in those 4 years. So it might not happen this year. It might not happen in Bio 1B where there's a lot of students. But as you go on, especially if you get into your major, get into smaller classes, make that connection with faculty. Okay. I was trying to find a metaphor that you guys, I was in the right generation. I hate these things, but I don't order these things. Maybe none of you order these things, but that's not my point. My point is, the macchiato might be your major. Maybe the caramel is your other classes. But Berkeley is so much more than that. And your college experience is so much more than that. So it is not just about getting your head down to the grindstone. That is not what will get you out of here in 4 years, feeling excited about what you did. Yes, you have to work hard here. Yes, we're going to challenge you. That is what we want to do. Hopefully that's why you're here. But for goodness sakes, enrich the rest of your life while you're here. Get out and enjoy it all. Enjoy. How many of you are from Southern California? Welcome to the Bay Area. It's lovely up here. It's a little chilly at times. Other out of state? Welcome to California. Fantastic. No, this is a great place. And if you're from the Bay Area, I'm sure there's things that you haven't explored yet. Yes. Bay Area people? Yeah, I know. No, it's great. I'm a transplant. As you saw, I grew up in the Northeast. I've been here 20 years and just fall in love with it like so many people do when they move to California. So, but what I'm saying here is, this is not a cookie cutter experience. Every one of you will make Berkeley a different experience. You will make your major a different experience. You will make your course of study. You will make your life here. And embrace that and take advantage of it and make the most of that. And then last, I just want to say a little bit about something that students are often very eager and interested in. And again, why did you choose Berkeley? You know, what brought you here? And what brought you to a research university? And often, one of the really unique opportunities is for undergrads to get involved in research. And it is a very special opportunity. It really extends the college experience. It extends your study of a subject into a totally different realm when you realize you are making the discoveries. You're not being taught those discoveries. And there are many opportunities here. Again, just try the domain, research.berkeley.edu. Actually is the undergraduate research website. It's all about the different opportunities. There's lots of things you can search through there on the website. I want to highlight one in particular, and you can go and cruise through this website. The URAP program, actually the opportunities went live today. URAP, the Undergraduate Research Apprenticeship Program, that's one place where faculty identify opportunities and advertise them, and there's an application process. You don't have to know someone. You don't have to make an email. You know, it's right there. It's transparent, but it's competitive. But at least that's a great place to start, looking at the wide range of opportunities. And then as you go on, the SURF fellows are summer undergraduate research opportunities. For example, when you're getting into sophomore, junior, senior year summer research, independent research. A few examples, here's an integrative biology major working with robotic instruments that are going up and down in the ocean to study the fluxes of nutrients and carbon in algae. And her advisor in this case is actually not an IB professor. You do not have to do research in a lab that's in the department that your major is in. As, you know, you can get lots of things approved here, ask a lot of questions, but you might find faculty in any number of departments whose research interests you. Another student working on the CRISPR technology, which I'm sure a lot of you have been hearing about, the gene editing technology, but how to improve it so that it doesn't make mistakes in the sense of editing target regions that were not the actual intended target of gene editing. Another student working on microbes, bacteria in the soil that produce antibiotics, and the interactions between the microbes influence the amount of antibiotic that's being made, and understanding those interactions could be a key to making these systems more effective in research and in medicine. Just a wide variety. That's just a sampling of this summer's fellows from this SURF program. So a few things about research. Contacting faculty, it can be, it can be a difficult first step. Obviously, your classes are great places to meet people. Your GSIs, graduate student instructor, often called TAs in the rest of the world, are a great resource. GSIs are your path into research labs. They are not what stands between you and faculty. They are what gets you to the research labs and to faculty, because graduate students are at the front line of research. They're doing a lot of the hard work in a lab. And your GSIs in your classes are a great resource to learn about research that's going on in different labs. Getting started, as I said, through URAP, educating yourself, do your homework. You know, that's your job to do your homework when you come and when you're first talking to people. Be patient and be flexible. If you knock on 20 doors, not literally, but metaphorically, 20 emails, whatever it is, all that matters is the one that opens. And the others were just like, how you got there, right? So maybe at times you may feel like, oh, I've contacted a few people. I'm not getting a nibble. I don't know how to get started. Be patient. Be flexible. It won't necessarily happen fall of freshman year, right? But and for transfer students, I know you're here with less time. We really understand that there's 2 years to get the most out of Berkeley, so that creates a different dynamic and a different kind of pressures. But if it's something you really care about, the opportunities are there. Be persistent, be patient, and be flexible. Okay, I'm going to stop there. So there's lots more info. Obviously, there's more info on the web. Ask those questions. Get to know your peers. Get to know other people in the major. It's 11 o'clock. This is scheduled for a little longer, and we have time for Q&A. It is a big room, though, and we would ask you to do it through a microphone, and Alex is here.
I'm right here with the microphone, so come over here. It's 11:07, and we have till 11:20.
Okay, so after 11:20.
No, I'm sorry. We have till 11:50. 50. We're good.
50? Oh, my goodness. I got to reschedule. And if you are rustling about and feeling, I'm happy to take questions. If some people want to leave, just try to leave quietly. That's all I'll say. Just try to make your way out quietly. All right. It's a nice loud mic. Let's go ahead.
With the recent increase of bioengineering, and especially with the changing of the plant genome in specific krauts or agricultural crops, what larger effects does it have on the ecosystem in general, especially when they leave their agricultural fields or escape into the wild?
So the question, that mic's sounds a little quieter. So the question is about bioengineering and the way that plants are being transformed. There's a lot of genetic transformation, you certainly hear about GMOs, and how it impacts how it's impacting ecosystems. The first answer I'd say is that there's a lot of concern, and one of the primary things is that there's actually some weeds that are not that distantly related from some of our crops. So sometimes a crop that is transformed for productive purposes in agriculture, those genes could escape into the wild and through pollination. And of course, there are some areas in forestry where the actual, these trees I'm talking about, some of our trees are planted as agricultural crops, essentially in forestry. So some of that transformation is intentional. But having said that, I would say that the actual impacts on ecosystems are mostly isolated cases. We have not transformed the Earth's surface with genetically modified organisms or genes escaping into the wild. So it's more in the realm of a lot of attention and concern than it is looking and saying, wow, we've already sort of had a lot of unintended consequences. That would be a short answer. And beyond that, I'd be guessing more than I'd be.
Hello, my name is Amber Ree, and I want to ask a question about the MCB program. Is that okay?
Yes, and if I can't answer, I will point you to those who can.
Up on the screen earlier, when it listed the different emphases under the program, there were a number that weren't listed online. Would they still be available? Because I was interested actually in biophysics, but it wasn't available when applying, and it wasn't online.
So that's definitely a detail I won't guess to, I won't venture to answer. Okay. So, but the topics I put up there was not a list of, that was not the sort of, this is what we teach, that was just the spectrum of biology, is really what I wanted to emphasize. And the key, if you're not getting the answer off, right off the mcb.berkeley.edu website, then the next step is to go into the advising office and explain what you're looking for and getting that. Because more often than not, what you're looking for is there. Again, the other side of Berkeley being a big university, there are very few things that someone here isn't passionate about. There's some lab or even an entire major or an entire department you haven't heard of sometimes. So, but you may have to ask. So don't ask those questions. Alex, you might know more.
There are only 5 official tracks in MCB, but there are lots of other things you can study, and biophysics may not be a track, but it's definitely something you can study. So it's, that won't be the name of your major, but it can be something that you can emphasize.
Yeah, that's very important. The name of your major is not, everyone who has the same major is not doing the same thing, right? There's all those upper division classes. There's all sorts of different ways you can say, I'm going to take every ecology class I can get my hands on, every biophysics class I can get my hands on, and satisfy my major. And your version of that major is going to look different than someone else. So pursuing your individual passion is something you can do within all these different opportunities.
Hi, my name is Ruby Welsh-Ferreira. I was wondering what advice you would have for seeking out research opportunities before we decide on a specific major or department.
Well, I urge you to start with URAP only because it's right there and they're laid out across all departments. It's not restricted to, you don't have to be a major in a department. Now, I'll be perfectly honest about it, you are then in an open, transparent process, which means you're also in a competitive process. And if other people from that major also apply, the faculty are going to look at it and look at interests. So you want to be sincere about your interests. pursue those opportunities. But I think in terms of, I don't think there's any, I'm not sure if I can give you any better general advice, kind of, so I'm just trying to frame that general recommendations about pursuing these opportunities, asking a lot of questions, and using these different resources. And then if it's in a specific area you're interested in, even if it's outside your major, it's about getting to know people and the offices. And Alex, I'm happy to have you follow up.
I just wanted to mention that Professor Bob Full is in the back, and he's going to be speaking later, and he actually intentionally brings in people from every major into his lab because he thinks it's a more creative process and people bring different perspectives, and he couldn't, the things they do, they couldn't possibly do if they only had biology majors in there. Am I right, Bob? Yes, so some people are looking for different majors, actually actively looking for different majors. So so it is all about your passion. It's not about your major, okay?
Hi, I could just say my name. I'm Devin Mother. I'd just like to ask, at office hours, what's the most common type of questions you get? Is it like about opportunities? Is it about confusion, learning more?
So I would say there's kind of two flavors of what happens in office hours. If it's a bigger class and there's 10 people around the table and I have an hour, then it's about, okay, how many of you are here for Monday, with a question about Monday's lecture versus Wednesday's lecture? Try to get at a little organization so we can cover everyone's questions, and that's the straight clarifying. I just want to ask questions about what's going on in class. That's going to be more common if there's more people there at an office hours. Now, especially in upper division classes, if you walk into office hours and there's 2 people there, one person talks for 15 minutes, and there's not time pressure, then it's like, I might want to go to grad school. Tell me about your path to grad school. I want to talk about the opportunities or other classes I might take. So office hours are not just about that class, okay, by any means. And that's why I say in larger classes, it may just be hard to get that time to have just a more relaxed discussion, but especially in a smaller class. Or if you had been the person who showed up that day when I was sitting there all alone, we could have talked about anything. So there is a lot of opportunity to have those broader conversations if there's not just too much pressure of other people wanting to focus on the material. I mean, in terms of asking questions about the class material, look, is it going to be on the exam is a terrible question, because I don't think I would have taught about it if it wasn't part of the class. So that's not a good lead. That's just a piece of advice here. Not a good lead, okay? It doesn't get your professor in the best mood with that opening question. Yes, that's why we're teaching the material. No, so showing that you've thought about it, like, look, I get this part, but I'm stuck on this. I just don't understand, this step or that graph, so just get to the heart of it. Like, what is it that's getting you stuck? And I don't expect, like, why should anyone in 50 minutes capture everything that, I've been thinking about it for a while, get it in one pass? Well, of course not. So let's come and talk through it again. I mean, that's what it's there for. And again, your GSIs will have office hours, and it's not just the professor and the lecturer. Take advantage of all those opportunities. People who know this material and can help answer questions. So,
thank you.
There's a lot of different. You can use it a lot of different ways.
I'm going to add one more question not to ask when you get to office hours. Why did I get a B- instead of a B+? Bad question. You want to ask a question that help you learn the material, not get a better grade, because the grade is not the goal, it's the learning that's the goal. And professors get cranky if you just ask about your grade, right?
That is true.
Yeah.
And again, the 12th week of a class is a bad time to be realizing that you wish you had done something differently 6 weeks ago and you're worried about the grade. It's like that, it starts with the learning, and it starts early in the semester. If a class is important to you, take it on from the beginning. Don't wait till the last minute and all of a sudden wonder why everything's not making sense if you're not engaging all along.
Hi, my name is Diana, and I have a very brief question. But I was very curious. Well, I'm curious to know more about the research you have conducted.
Oh, I'm sorry, say it again. I can't hear you.
I'm curious to know more about the research you have conducted.
So, okay, well, I'll give you, after college, I went to the Amazon for a year and climbed trees. That was amazing. And then I realized I didn't know how any of them worked because I didn't know that much botany. I hadn't actually taken quite the right flavor of botany. I became an ecophysiologist, which is all like the water and the photosynthesis. I worked in Mexico for my PhD. Like, what's the basis of how these trees grow so fast in the tropics in terms of the morphology, what their shapes are? That was my PhD work in Mexico. I worked on palm trees, which people harvest, about sustainable harvesting of palm leaves in Mexico, which could contribute to rural development in rainforest areas. And then I shifted all my work to California, and a lot of it's about surviving the drought. So it's just like these things I showed you about the oaks, about their tolerance to the drought, that problem of embolism. And all the different, we have hundreds and hundreds of species of plants in California, understanding the diversity of all their strategies. I've worked in I like to bring things together, so I've worked in phylogenetics and ecology and physiology, and then brought it all to studying climate change. So that's 25 years in a nutshell. But really, I mean, parts of what I showed you, I didn't necessarily show you like, oh, here's the publication. I mean, this isn't necessarily the moment for it, just to show you the things that get us excited as problems and the things that I've been excited about. And frankly, right now, most of what I work on is trying to think about how climate change will impact native biodiversity, plants and animals. And if you work for California state parks and you get up in the morning and you go, well, what am I supposed to do about climate change? We're trying to find those answers. And that's a whole other conversation we can have about applying these things to conservation and in the world. So.
Good morning. My name is Joseph. I'm a transfer student studying MCB. I really enjoyed your lecture. In particular, I liked the picture of the globe showing the height of trees throughout the world. And redwood trees are the tallest in the world, right? So I was expecting to see the most yellow in Northern California. Yeah. That's my question. They're the tallest, right?
The only reason is they are the tallest trees in the world. We believe that there was some eucalyptus in Australia that might have at least been on the same order of magnitude, mostly cut down now. And the tallest redwoods may have been cut down. The only reason you don't see it on that map is that it's a global map. And that area of California is so small, it doesn't even show up at that global scale.
The Oregon border down to
Santa Cruz, right at the Oregon border, that little Redwood National Park, Redwood State Park, Joseph P. Grant, that's where the tallest trees are. So it's just the scaling problem.
So this summer I went backpacking in Point Reyes, and we didn't see many redwood trees there. Do you have any idea why that was?
So there are no redwoods in Point Reyes. You all may know Muir Woods if you're in the Bay Area. So there's redwoods on Mount Tam. There's a lot of redwoods around Santa Cruz. The last pocket is down in Big Sur. And they need a lot of water, so that it depends on the fog. And then it also depends on where storms off the Pacific come and hit the mountains. The storms in the Northern Hemisphere, winter storms spin counterclockwise. You'll learn about that if you take Bio 1B. And they spin counterclockwise, so they come in and hit the land from the southwest. So mountains that face southwest get hit especially, and that's why the Santa Cruz Mountains, the whole area above campus, has such high rainfall, and the redwoods are really well developed there. Between Mount Tam and northern Sonoma County, there's a dip in the Coast Range, and the winds blow through, and the fog doesn't accumulate. We actually call it the Petaluma Gap. And if you look at the maps, there's a band of grassland that go. If you've been in that area of Petaluma going out to Point Reyes, there's a lot of dairy cattle, not many trees. There's a band of grassland right across Petaluma, right across towards the Delta and out to Contra Costa County, Brentwood. And part of that is that winds come off the ocean instead of blow through there, and it's a little drier, and the fog doesn't accumulate because there's no hills capturing the fog. So that's the best. That's one reason there's no redwoods. The other is that there may have been more in the past and they were cut down and they haven't come back yet. So there's always the land use problem of what people have done in the landscape. So
Thank you very much.
This is the kind of stuff I love thinking about.
Hi, I'm Layla, and I had a question about deciding between choosing MCB and IB, especially for something like ecology or botany, because obviously there's a lot on both scales, grand scale and molecular. And I was curious about if you, for example, you are botany, yeah? Plants, but for,
plants, yeah,
for,
no, I am.
For
yeah.
botany, to use that as
plant
an
ecology,
example,
botany, yeah. No, I study plants.
Do you think that you do more work on the cellular level or on the general world scale?
So you can, absolutely. So you see, my interests are very much whole plant, and especially a lot in the field, which is very much the core of what happens in IB. If you were in College of Natural Resources, there's also people who do things very similar to me in environmental sciences, policy and management, the forestry, the conservation studies major. If you're really into plants, and you're caught, and your interests are caught by the cellular, biochemical, physiological processes, the key thing you need to look at is plant and microbial biology is a department in the College of Natural Resources, and they have their own major. Genetics and plant biology is a major in College of Natural Resources. So MCB has only a couple groups. Even that might be a little generous because most of the plant molecular biologists, for historical reasons, are in a different department than in College of Natural Resources. So just pay attention to PMB for that part of plant biology.
So how much would you say if I were to do that MCB or focus more on the molecular level, how many more opportunities would I have to also look at the grand scale? Like, bigger, like, is it purely molecular?
So it's really, I think the lesson here is it's really about balancing, getting to know the major requirements, sitting down with those sheets and those courses, and looking at the options, what kind of electives are available, and then thinking about what else do I want to do at Berkeley? Am I going to have room to take more biology beyond my major requirements? And what's the trade-off with taking things that aren't the sciences or aren't biology? Because of course, there's all those classes are available to you.
Right.
The question is, what are you going to do in 4 years? So it's the trade-offs.
Right,
but
right.
we'd love seeing people with any interest coming in and taking these classes, and try not to get stuck in that
Got it.
in too narrow a view of the world. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Shivani, and I'm wondering, so you mentioned working in the Amazon and Mexico and stuff. So I was wondering if there are a lot of fieldwork opportunities in biology here, and if so, can you give some examples?
So the field opportunities are really, they're sort of dear to my heart, as you can tell. And there's some one of the great ways to get started certainly is like that field section, a bunch of courses we call field lab courses in IB, where the labs are engaged field work. There's quite a few classes that get you in the field, ecosystems of California, natural history of the vertebrates. And then the fieldwork opportunities, the main thing is looking at your summers. And the biggest problem is that the field, if the field is your lab, is not just over in VLSB, right? What if it's a 2-hour drive away? It can be hard to do during the week when you're taking classes. And one of the challenges we do face in engaging students sometimes is the work that's happening in the spring. It's hard to get people just in your schedule to have time to go out and get into the field. Now, if you want to take weekends, and there's graduate students who are busy taking weekends, there's also things going on. So summer can be really key. So really looking for summer opportunities where you can get out and go work in a field reserve. University of California has 39 field reserves, the whole system across all of California. Faculty from every campus work in these sites. You just have to think about it in the context of your schedule and how you're going to fit this in, because you can't just spend an afternoon in the lab and then go on with the rest of your life if you're trying to get involved in fieldwork. But we love seeing people there.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Elise. In terms of reading and staying updated on publications, I know a lot of people do that really intensely. Like their goal is to read 2 or 3 a week or at least once a week, and some people just don't at all. How do you suggest we go about that?
So, there's a couple things here. So the primary literature, which is the core of where discovery is reported in science, obviously that's what is then distilled once it gets to a textbook, once it gets to whatever readings you're using in a class. So certainly as you get into upper division, primary literature will become part of the readings for most classes, and that'll be some guidance of good papers to read. It's not, if you're new to this, it's not an easy start. You grab a journal article and you're like, what are these people talking about? Between the jargon, the statistics, the embedded assumption that you know a bunch of things. So I wouldn't worry about it a whole lot right away in the sense that that's what all of your classes will build you up to. But just ask people I would just ask people to point you to good papers, especially if you're new in a field, just because if you start with like the latest issue of Science, it can just be like, what am I, it's hard for me. I can't read papers that are outside my field. I mean, I can read it and I kind of know where they're coming from, right? But it's written for an audience that's really spent a lot of time. I will tell you one story. I had one student, this has only happened to me once, who was on Google Scholar during class. And like, as I'm lecturing, he's like, so I was just looking at a paper in the literature. I was like, what? That's not fair. You haven't even left the classroom yet, and you're already challenging me on the latest research related to what I'm trying to lecture about. So that was pretty awesome. I had to say it was like, okay, that's cool. So, hey, he just went right to Google Scholar and said, what's up on this topic that we're learning about in class? So it's all sitting there for you, right? And you're here inside the paywall, your berkeley.edu paywall, and you have everything available. So sure, jump in, take a shot at it. Don't be discouraged, though. I mean, literally, I can't understand a lot of these papers, right, if it's not in your field. So if you're going to become a professional in this business, that's what those years of training get you to, is like just understanding the language and the methods and what are they talking about. but it's an adventure.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Abby, and I was I'm really interested in herpetology and conservation, but also bio-inspired design, and I'm wondering if that would lend me partly in CNR, but I'm LNS.
So Professor Full hasn't left the room yet, so you should just grab him to talk about design. He's right there. Herpetology is taught in IB. So there's a funny there's a historical legacy which has to do with how universities were organized in the United States, that CNR actually has most of the entomology and a lot of the fish biology, but IB has more birds, reptiles, mammals, herpetology, mammalogy. So herpetology you'll find in IB, but then a lot of this stuff crosses over in terms of classes, but in terms of your major, IB is a great place if you're interested in it. And for design, you can't do better than corner Dr. Full and go see his lecture at 2 o'clock in VLSB.
I was planning on going to that one.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Kelly Morgan. I was wondering, how difficult is it to declare an integrated biology major, like whether that's a very competitive major and if you have to submit an application for it?
IB is not a capped major, so there's going to be requirements. I'm not going to try to do them from memory. I don't know them from memory, so go and look at them, but it's not a capped competitive by application major. And the one thing I didn't want to, everyone's on a different path, so I didn't want to get into the weeds of it, but if you know it's what you want to do, and you can declare by the end of sophomore year, it just means that you have better registration by junior year. If you don't declare till junior, this is what you ask all these questions, like when can I declare, what do I need to declare? If you know it's what you want to do though, heck, just jump into it, get onto it as soon as you can, and then it can open up some of the opportunities. But it's not, but that, our path is designed for people on lots of different schedules, so.
Thank you.
But it's not capped.
Hello, my name is Beatrice. I'm a transfer student. I was wondering if you know about any common challenges that transfer students in IB particularly face in terms of transitioning to Cal, and if so, if you have any advice on how to make this transition smoother.
So no, I don't, not a lot. So let me just say a couple things. I mean, first of all, again, take advantage of those resources between the transfer office and the advisors, because you have less time, right? And you're not, if you've done intro bio, you're jumping right into upper division. Go to office hours, because if this is a new environment, go check out what it's all about, right? If you're getting to know it. And then I would just say, welcome, because in my own experience in upper division, I have absolutely just totally enjoyed and been really excited by the transfer students and the diversity of experiences that people bring. So you are absolutely, your experience here, the only difference is that it will be shorter. So just talking to all your peers is, and getting the advice you can.
And another quick question about office hours. Let's say I find faculty that's working on some research that I'm interested in, but that class doesn't necessarily fit on my schedule. Would you recommend I go to their office hours anyways, or should that time be reserved for people on the class and there's other ways to contact them?
So office hours are open in that sense, but you don't have to be in a class. You may find that you get there and you kind of have to wait because the people who are in a class are the primary, if that's most of it. That's kind of what I went back to about a bigger class. Those office hours really might be consumed by that. Not everyone's, we should all be advertising our office hours all the time. We don't all get them advertised. Sometimes they're only advertised within the class. So go to the advisors, go to the undergraduate office and go to the advisors if you're not getting the information you need. And if you have to email people, email people. And if you don't get a response, that's why I said be patient, don't be discouraged. Everyone's just really busy around here.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Robert. I'm a freshman. I'm interested in molecular biology, and I'm wondering. So the College of Chemistry has a chemical biology major, and then this college has Letters and Sciences has a MCB with a biochemistry focus. So like, what's sort of the difference between the programs from the different
You are absolutely out of my expertise. Okay. Alex, do you know enough about it? That's right. Go right to the undergraduate advising office. Go to VLSB and talk to them about those different majors. Okay. Yeah. So and again, I would like to be useful, but your question, there's going to be important details about what you're asking about the differences that I'm not familiar with. So can't help you on that one.
Hi. I'm Linnea. I'm from San Luis Obispo County, and I know you mentioned that you're doing research there. So I was just wondering what kind of research you're doing.
Watching trees die. It was kind of discouraging. The drought, you know what it was like down there, right? I mean, most of the country got relief from the drought, and Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo was still caught. It was the last place where the rains really came. No, we were working on a private ranch, and it was a rancher who's very research friendly and offered his site so we could pitch a tent and spend the night and study the oak trees on his ranch. And it was just a really nice site. We were there over 3 years during the drought, going back every few months, doing measurements in the field of the water status of those trees so that we have these nice, they recover in spring and then dry out in summer and recover. And then some of them, it just went to summer and then they didn't quite come back in spring. And then we saw some of them dying. And we had that because as the drought heated up, one of the things that often happens in the field is by the time a tree dies, it's a little too late to go and study it because you didn't realize 2 years earlier that that was the one that was going to die. So we did have the opportunity to be following some trees and actually see the difference between the ones that actually ended up dying. Not quite enough for the statistics that we'd like to use, but that picture I showed you, that picture was from that site just out east of Santa Margarita, east of 101, where it gets pretty hot and dry.
Hi, my name is Hannah. I'm a transfer student, and I had a question about getting involved in research. Again, coming in as a transfer, we have limited time. My first question would be when would be the best time to start applying for it? And do you have any advice that could help us get into a lab sooner?
So the URAP is right now is the time to apply. So go look at all those applications. Mm-hmm. And again, I do understand that it's a different challenge when you have 2 years or hopefully 2, maybe 2.5. Depending on how things go. And then the other is, I think the other is connecting right away with faculty in the upper division courses. So early in the semester, you don't have to wait until you finish the class. Early in the semester, I'm in your class, I'm really enjoying it. I'm a transfer student. And don't assume that person is the person who necessarily has a research opportunity. It's more, this is what I'm interested in, what other faculty, who else works in this area. Every single person is a possible path to that hit of where you get you never know which door when it opens is going to be the success, right? Which conversation leads to the recommendation to someone, a graduate student or a faculty member. So I would take advantage of the people you meet in those upper division classes right away. And then go through and go through the formal program. And there's a lot of programs there on, to go through regular online procedures for these opportunities.
I have a couple more pieces of advice for you. One, there are 16 workshops being held during GBO by the Undergraduate Research Office. Go to one of those, connect up with them. And two, I know transfer students are extremely competitive for the independent research programs like Haas Scholars, McNair Scholars, et cetera, partly because often they're independent from their parents, so then they're financial aid eligible. And if you're financial aid eligible, you are more, some of the programs are for students who are financial aid eligible. So it tends to be the transfer students actually are predominate in some of those programs. It's might be counterintuitive, but it's true. Right. So you're totally competitive for them.
That's a detail I didn't know. Very interesting.
Hello, I'm Amber again, and you talked earlier about how you watch trees die, and I actually wanted to ask you a question about it because it was reported at the end of last year that there were more than 102 million dead trees in California, and even though we're officially out of drought, what does this mean for the millions of dead trees? Because I went to a forestry program, and I know that certain places they do prescribe burns, but I come from Southern California, so I'm closer to the San Bernardino Mountains, and I know that over there it's a really bad with bark beetles and stuff. So is it? I just wanted to ask.
Yeah. So first of all, this is a level of mortality that we haven't seen, right? So there's a lot of questions about what's going to happen. So a few main things, especially in the conifer forest, the pine forest, like in the Sierra Nevada, San Bernardinos. There's an immediate risk of fire. So some of those trees they're more flammable as they dry out, and we're seeing that right now. There's a fire in Yosemite right now that's certainly going through some of the areas of high mortality. That actually, once the needles fall off, it turns out then they're not that flammable for a little while. I heard someone say that in 10 or 15 years, a lot of these trees are going to fall, and there's going to be some kinds of fires that we haven't necessarily experienced before, of all these fallen trunks that have dried out over 10 years that are on the landscape. So we might get into some kind of novel ecosystem situations that we haven't seen. And then the question is, what's going to replace them? And with climate change, as warmer temperatures creep up the Sierra Nevada, we've already seen since the early 20th century that some places where those pines die, what comes up underneath them are oak seedlings that have been coming in, and they're more tolerant of warmer temperatures and drought. So we'll see pine forests become oak forests in some places, but that could take decades, right? We don't know how quickly those trees will grow. So we'll watch for ecosystems changing, a lot of concern about fires. And then the bark beetles were more of an issue of what killed them, right? Once they're dead, the bark beetles are going in as they're dying, and one of the causes of death that contributing to that mortality. But I think we're in some kind of new territory. There's not a lot of experience with mortality on this scale. So it's going to be an interesting couple decades. And then we'll see if we get another drought, you know, what that would do. But at least if we get another drought, all those trees that were sensitive to drought are now dead. And the ones that made it survived one. So, you know, some of the thinking is about whether some of the systems might be more resilient because they got through one drought, and now the trees that are left are better prepared for another one. Anyway.
Thank you.
Hello again. I went to Santa Rosa Junior College, so I recognized Petaluma. And in my cell biology class, we did some research in Pepperwood Preserve on the oaks. We, in particular, looked at sudden oak death. And so I'm wondering if sudden oak death today is as prevalent as it was maybe a couple of years ago. What do you have to say about that?
What did you see? My sense is that it seems to be kind of in a steady state. Like we're not...
You asked what I saw?
Yeah, I mean, were there a lot of new trees getting hit, or?
What we learned is that it's a problem in California with all of the oaks around here, and what we did is we exposed different types of leaves to Phytophthora ramorum, this protist organism that causes sudden oak death. For example, we exposed younger leaves and older leaves to this Phytophthora ramorum to see the different effects, and we found that the younger leaves were more resistant to the protist.
So what I've heard is that there's places where the spread seems to have stopped, like going inland, because it's like likes wet conditions. So as it gets dry in the interior, so but it's still spreading up in Oregon. So I'm a little unclear on the latest of whether there seem to be a lot of still susceptible trees that are out there, or if a lot of the susceptible ones died, and now we're looking at the consequences, kind of like the drought mortality, and how much new infection is happening. So. It's at the margins of what I do. I keep, I kind of am aware of it, but I haven't been studying it directly. But before you leave, come say hi, because Pepperwood, the pictures I showed you, that's my main field site.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Pepperwood in Santa Rosa, great plot. It's a great spot.
Hello, my name is Yain Park, and I would first like to appreciate all the lectures and wonderful words you have told us so far. I had a couple of questions. The first one is regarding statistics. So, when I asked for advice to people have been going to the school for longer or been researching in the field longer, they always recommend that I take a statistics course because like everybody in bio major, if you're gonna research, then you'll have to look at data, analyze, and it's a very necessary skill and tool that you should learn. So would you say that it is really necessary?
So if you go into, I definitely urge people to take statistics. It's not necessarily required for every path that you might take. So I can't say that we've embedded it into every biology path. But a couple of things. The field is changing in some ways. So data sciences 8. So data sciences 8, which has been scaled up to accommodate a very large number of students, has some really valuable training about statistics embedded in it. So even though it's called data sciences, so data sciences, it's a whole nother discussion. If you're interested, go to one of the data sciences, go to the sessions this week. Data sciences is kind of a new thing as a field, because we used to have computer science and math and statistics, and data sciences sits right at the middle of all of those fields. And it's really just taking shape as a discipline, like as something we teach people at data sciences. This is brand new, all over the country. This is brand new. And Berkeley is as much at the forefront of trying to reinvent the way we teach as anyone. So data sciences 8, you'll definitely learn some principles of statistics that will be very useful to you. And from there, same thing, asking questions, because there's statistics scattered across this campus. You can take it in psychology, you can take it in economics, you can take it in public health, you can take it in environmental sciences, you can take it in the stats department. And there'll be different flavors and different strengths, and one will fit your schedule and one won't. So I will happily urge you to take statistics because it will pay off if you do research. Then you just have to see what fits into your schedule and your requirements.
Is it okay if I ask one more question?
Sure, we're going to take these last two, I think, and then, I mean, you're all hanging out, so you seem to want the answers to these questions, but heck, whatever.
Thank you. So I am a reciprocity student or education abroad program student. So I will be staying here just for a year, but I was highly interested in a public health program that UC Berkeley provided, and I knew that it's such a great school, so I came here. And I would love to participate in URAP or some sort of research program, but I was just concerned that maybe the professors might not really want to accept exchange students just because we're not really a Berkeley student, we're not here for long. So I was wondering if like our status mattered, as well as if there's any like additional way I could approach the professors so they would like to have me even though I'm an EAP student.
I don't know the answer. I think it would be, it certainly could impact your, the ability to get into research, because look, labs are different. Some labs, first of all, want to get students engaged freshman or sophomore year because they know it'll be a year or two of training for you to get to the point of doing independent research senior year, just in terms of the skills. Now, part of that means being prepared to really do the apprenticeship that first year you might be ready to do hands-on research, and like, no, you're just in the early training phase of getting to know lab procedures and helping out, because the real excitement comes by sticking with it and being here for 2 or 3 years. So some labs have an absolute, they need that commitment. But others, again, like through URAP, it's a 1 semester opportunity, and it's not, it could become something longer, but it's not structured into how they're set up that you're not making a commitment any more than the faculty members committing to offer you something for 2 years. You're not committing to be available for 2 years. So I would just pursue the opportunities there. But some things I think will be more limited if you're here for a shorter time.
Do you think that maybe there are some aspects that exchange students can contribute, like uniquely?
I would agree with that, and I think it would be unique to the situation. So just thinking about what you offer that is distinct from your experience and bringing that to what you bring to Berkeley is a great thing.
Thank you so much.
All right, a last question.
I'm Miles. I was wondering, you answered a question a little bit earlier about like reading primary publications and journals. I was just wondering, you already said that it wasn't, that we would learn it in classes and it wasn't, super important to dive right in. What are your personal, what's your go-to place to look for primary publications, and how would you recommend sort of picking which ones to read out of?
So this has totally changed with all the online resources we have. So when I was a graduate student, you received journals in print, and they came to the lab, and there was 4 or 5 journals that you received. So of course that was mostly what you read, and then you go to the library. It's just, and I can only tell you about the rows and rows of printed books that were the equivalent of the internet, where you'd sort through indexes and databases, and it's crazy. So, and then we started receiving table of contents by email. So now you can subscribe to way too many, and then you're just like, and now I just shuttle them all to my spam box virtually because I can't keep track of them all. But increasingly now, it's not even about the journal or the table of contents, it's the keyword searching, right? You go into Google Scholar. So Google Scholar does this amazing thing. Put in keywords, and it sorts the results by the number of times that paper has been cited by other people. So it's telling you right at the top, this is a high impact paper on this topic because it's often cited by other people in the field. Now that means and then you can filter to 2016. If you want the latest paper, you filter to 2017. But if you want to start with what's the highest impact papers on these keywords, Google Scholar just gives us to it like that, right? So that's a great way to start. Also, the other thing to think about is review papers, right? So there are review papers that are in the primary literature, but they're not the primary research paper. They're journals that often handle reviews. So starting with a review paper in a field is the review. I should have said this earlier. The review paper is the bridge between the upper division textbook and the research literature, right? It's a up-to-date, written by researchers in the field, but it's not the nuts and bolts of every piece of work. It's trying to put it into a bigger picture and review the status of the field. So that might be a good bridge. But Google Scholar, putting keywords into Google Scholar is amazing. It's amazing what pops up. So the entire literature is sitting there at your fingertips. You don't have to know which journal it's going to be in. You don't have to know, you know what I mean? You don't have to know who was doing the work, because it's just gotten so easy to search, but overwhelming. So just find some things, try them out, read them, see if you enjoy them, see
Thank
where
you.
it leads. All right, thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your orientation week.